It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. My colleague Benji Haya is joining me from Washington, D.C. today. Benji, hello there.
Good morning, Tanvi. It's 9 a.m. here in Washington, 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, efforts by the administration here to deal with crises at home and abroad. The war in the Middle East, of course, and another corridor of migrants approaching the US border. Plus, we'll have the latest on controversial votes from Serbia and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. All that ahead. First, back to you in New Delhi for the headlines.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar holds bilateral talks with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. India and Russia plan to jointly produce modern military weaponry.
We have also discussed the prospects of military and technical cooperation, including the joint production of modern weaponry.
Houthis claim responsibility for drone attack and warn that Red Sea attacks will not stop until Israel ends its offensive in Gaza. Israel terms them as an act of Iranian terrorism. Russia warns Japan over providing Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. Russian Foreign Ministry says it will have grave consequences for Russia-Japan ties. And world stock markets sailed to the highest in over a year on US Fed rate cut hopes. India among the top 10 best performing stock markets in the world this year. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow on Wednesday. Jaishankar said that India-Russia relationship has been very strong and very steady, and he believes that both the countries have lived up to a special and privileged strategic partnership. Dr. Jaishankar is on a 5-day visit to Russia.
Russia relations remain very steady, remain very strong. They are based on our strategic convergence, on our geopolitical interests, and because they are mutually beneficial. We appreciated the fact that our trade is at an all-time high. We have crossed $50 billion turnover last year. We expect to exceed that this year. And what is important is that this trade is more balanced, it is sustainable, and it provides for fair market access.
After talks with his Indian counterpart, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said India and Russia have made progress in talks on plans to jointly produce modern military weaponry.
We have also discussed the prospects of military and technical cooperation, including the joint production of modern weaponry. As mentioned before, we are respectful of the aspiration of our Indian colleagues to diversify their military and technical links. We also understand, and we are ready to support their initiatives to produce the military products as part of the Made in India program. We stand ready to cooperate in this area.
And to tell us more about the specifics of these bilateral talks held between the foreign ministers of India and Russia, we have Dasha Chernishova reporting from Moscow.
Well, we understand the whole scope of bilateral and international agenda has been discussed during that meeting, with the Russian foreign minister saying that Russia cherishes and values its relations with India, and India saying that Russia is a reliable and valuable partner for India. Now, we understand that one of the issues on the table is trade turnover that has increased over the course of the past years, reaching $50 billion last year and expected to exceed that benchmark mark this year. It is a growth from around $13 billion just 2 years ago. Now we understand the sides are aiming to have more settlements in national currencies. This is in line with the so-called de-dollarization in the international economic relations. We also understand that the sides have been talking about tighter partnership and tighter cooperation when it comes to the international platforms, be it the United Nations, the Shanghai Security Cooperation Organization, or any other format where the two countries are represented. The military technical cooperation has also been discussed, with the sides talking about the joint production of the military equipment. They are discussing this prospect as well. And obviously the energy sector, where Russia is exporting more of its energy resources to India. And now we also understand that they are talking about widening the scope of the areas where the two sides could be cooperating.
That was Dasha Chernyshova from Moscow. Now, talking of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, we are now into day 672 of the armed conflict. Deadly strikes between Russia and Ukraine continue as the counter-offensive operations intensify. At least 2 were killed in Russia's latest drone attack on Wednesday.
A day after Russian defense minister said Ukrainian counter-offensive stopped, Ukraine's air defense shot down 32 out of 46 Russia-launched drones on Wednesday. Earlier, Russian forces shelled the railway station in southern Ukrainian city of Kherson. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also confirmed the attack and said that the number of casualties are still being ascertained.
There was a Russian strike on the Kherson railway station. There was an evacuation train. All services are now on site. The number of dead and injured is being established. There were many civilians there.
Earlier on Tuesday, Ukraine attacked the Crimean port of Feodosia, damaging a large Russian landing ship, killing 1 person and injuring 2 others.
A big assault carrier was destroyed, and it became a part of a fleet to which Moskva missile cruiser belongs.
Kyiv, which had used cruise missiles in the attack, did not specify its kinds, as both Britain and France have supplied Ukraine with such missiles. While Russia has hinted that it may try to seize more Ukrainian territory along the Black Sea coast, as Putin earlier this month said that Odessa, the headquarters of Ukraine's own navy, was a Russian city.
Further, the Russian Foreign Ministry warned Japan today over providing Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. Spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said if Japan decides to hand over Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, it will have grave consequences for Russia-Japan ties. Japan has also joined its Western allies in imposing sweeping economic sanctions on Russia.
It is not excluded that the transfer of Patriot ammunition will involve the use of an already well-established scheme in which the munitions end up in Ukraine. Regarding that, we should like to warn that if Japanese missiles fall into the hands of Ukrainian armed forces, such actions will be regarded as hostile to the Russian Federation and will have grave consequences for Japan in the context of bilateral ties.
On to the Israel-Hamas conflict now. Egypt and Qatar have been playing the role of mediators in this conflict. US President Joe Biden discussed the need to release hostages held in Gaza with Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani over phone on Tuesday. My colleague Benji Haya is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Benji, 82 days into the conflict, the return of hostages still remains a major concern.
Absolutely. We're told US President Joe Biden has spoken with the Qatari Emir in an effort to secure the release of all those hostages held by Hamas. Qatar and Egypt, of course, were mediators between Israel and Hamas in the late November truce that we saw. In a statement, the White House said the leaders discussed the urgent effort required to secure the release of the remaining hostages, and they also spoke about ways to increase access to aid. The Israeli army released videos on Wednesday showing ground, air and naval strikes strikes on Hamas targets in Gaza. The conflict intensified in the central area of the Palestinian territory, just south of the waterway that divides the Gaza Strip into two. The Israeli army is warning civilians to leave that area. But the war shows no sign of abating. Israeli military chief Herzi Halevi says it'll likely go on for many more months. Israel's vowed to continue until it's defeated Hamas after its fighters infiltrated Israel's border on October 7th, killing 1,200 people and taking, at the time, about 240 Israelis hostage.
There are no magic solutions. There are no shortcuts in dismantling a terrorist organization. Only determined and persistent fighting will work, and we are very, very determined. We will reach Hamas's leadership too, whether it takes a week or if it takes months.
The United Nations has assigned Dutch politician Sigrid Kaag as its humanitarian coordinator. Her appointment follows last week's UN Security Council resolution calling for more aid to enter the Palestinian enclave. DD India's William Denzilo reports from New York.
As well as serving as Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister in the Netherlands, Sigrid Kaag has also performed a number of UN duties in the past, including Special Coordinator for Lebanon. Now, as of January 8th, she'll be taking on a new UN role, which is Humanitarian Relief Coordinator in Gaza. The United Nations describes her responsibilities, including her work to facilitate, coordinate, monitor and verify humanitarian relief consignments for Gaza. This is part of a UN Security Council resolution that was passed last week that calls for the urgent steps to be taken to immediately allow the safe, unhindered and expanded humanitarian access in Gaza. The resolution took days of diplomatic wranglings for Council members to find enough consensus to pass it. But critics say it's been watered down and diluted too much, no longer calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. UN aid agencies warn that the healthcare system in Gaza is on the brink of collapse, and other aid officials on the ground warn that a quarter of the population in the Palestinian enclave are facing catastrophic levels of hunger. Recently, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that a ceasefire is the only way to end the nightmare people in Gaza are currently going through. William Denslow in New York, reporting for DD India.
A crisis unfolding in the Red Sea following a spate of attacks on ships, coupled with a drought in the Panama Canal, are creating major causes for concern for global trade, with a sharp rise in oil prices of over 2%. That surge coming on Tuesday. DD India's Mihir Makuri has the details.
Amidst the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have again stepped up their Red Sea attacks, threatening to target all ships heading to Israel and warning shipping companies against dealing with Israeli ports in solidarity with Gazans. Houthis claimed responsibility for Tuesday's missile attack on a container ship in the Red Sea.
The Yemeni armed forces confirmed the continuation of their operations in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea against Israeli ships or those heading to the ports of occupied Palestine until the food and medicine needed by the Gaza Strip are brought in.
However, the Mediterranean shipping company said there were no injuries to its crew from the attack on its ship, the United 8, en route from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan. Israel has referred to the Houthi attacks on ships at sea as an act of Iranian terrorism.
The attacks at sea on ships which have no Israeli link is an act of Iranian terrorism carried out by the Houthis, and this is a global problem.
On Tuesday, the United States claimed to have shot down 5 missiles fired by the Iranian-backed Houthis and 12 attack drones. Meanwhile, the Israeli military declared that an Israeli fighter plane had intercepted a quote-unquote hostile aerial target that was headed toward Israeli territory over the Red Sea region.
Today, an Israeli fighter jet intercepted a hostile aerial target in the Red Sea area which was en route to Israeli territory. It did not cross into Israeli territory. The Houthi fire towards Israeli territory is an act of terrorism. It is an act directed by Iran and by means of Iranian intelligence and weapons.
The reported incidents come a week after the United States announced a multinational maritime security initiative in the Red Sea region in response to attacks on vessels by Yemen's Houthis. India has also vowed a strong response against those who masterminded the attacks on MV Chempluto in Arabian Sea and drone attack on vessel MV Sai Baba in Red Sea. The Houthi strikes have resulted in a dramatic increase in container transportation rates as businesses look to ship their goods via alternate, often longer routes. Mayor Macquarie, DD, India.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is heading to Mexico City to meet with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador amidst a migrant crisis at the US-Mexican border. At least 8,000 migrants and asylum seekers are continuing to move north across southern Mexico, the state there of Chiapas, hoping eventually to reach the American border. To the UK, where Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt says he'll present the spring budget on March 6th in what could be his last chance to introduce tax changes before the next general election. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party are trailing heavily behind the main opposition Labour Party. But the country's weak economy and budget deficit means both Mr Sunak and Mr Hunt have very little room for pre-election giveaways. More now on Serbia, where thousands continue to protest over recent election results. The opposition Serbia Against Violence alliance, which placed second in the general election earlier this month, has accused the ruling Serbian Progressive Party of widespread voter fraud. The party's been organising daily protests in front of the Election Commission. Meanwhile, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a protest called on by opposition supporters took a violent turn on Wednesday. Several left injured in the capital, Kinshasa, after police fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators calling for a rerun of last week's chaotic presidential and legislative elections, which they allege to have irregularities. The president is seeking a second 5-year term and leads in the partial results released by the Electoral Commission. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you now in the studio.
Thank you, Benji, for joining us. You're watching DD India Global with me and Benji. Still to come on the show. China thanks Taiwan for their aid after the recent earthquake, but also threaten more trade sanctions on Taipei as elections approach there next month. And South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun, who drew global attention with his performance in the Oscar-winning film Parasite, found dead in an apparent suicide in Seoul. We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to Asia now. The Chinese government on Wednesday threatened to place further trade sanctions on Taiwan. This is in further escalation of the war of words as Taiwan's presidential and parliamentary elections, which are scheduled on January the 13th, approach closer. Earlier this month, Taiwan had accused China of economic coercion and election interference after Beijing announced the end of tariff cuts, claiming that Taipei violated a trade agreement between the two sides signed in the year 2010. Meanwhile, China's Taiwan Affairs Office expressed heartfelt thanks to the organizations and business people of Taiwan for their aid after the recent earthquake in northwest China. The Taiwanese donations to the quake relief work mean that both sides are families across the Taiwan Strait, said a Taiwan Affairs Office spokesperson. Earlier this month, northwest China was struck by an earthquake that destroyed over 200,000 homes and killed more than 100 people. Further east in Asia, Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority on Wednesday decided to lift its de facto ban on operations at Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings' Kashiwazaki Kariwa nuclear power plant. The nuclear watchdog determined that it now has enough information to lift the ban at the plant in central Japan following additional inspections and meetings with TEPCO president. South Korea conducted a rare defense drill on Wednesday that simulated an attack by North Korea on Seoul. More than 1,000 South Korean military, police and emergency personnel joined the drill. The exercise comes after North Korea posed a threat after it tested an intercontinental ballistic missile and launched its first military spy satellite with the neighbors, reinstating last month some military measures eased after a 2018 pact. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh visited the border areas of Jammu and Kashmir and took stock of the security situation there. Interacting with the troops, the Defence Minister said, "Every soldier is important to us and every soldier is like a member of the family, and we cannot tolerate anyone looking down on our citizens."
मैं आपको आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं कि घटना की गंभीरता को देखते हुए जो भी आवश्यक और जो भी उचित कदम है वह उठाने की भरपूर कोशिश की जा रही है। हमारे लिए हर सैनिक बेहद महत्वपूर्ण है और हमारा एक सैनिक, मैं मानता हूं, वो हमारे परिवार के सदस्य के समान है। यह हम सब के अंदर यह भावना रहती है, सारे देशवासियों के अंदर यह भावना रहती है और आपके ऊपर कोई नजर डाले तो सचमुच यह हम सबको कतई बर्दाश्त नहीं है।
More from India. The country's Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra is being undertaken across the country with the aim of attaining saturation of government's flagship schemes and ensuring that the benefits of these schemes reach targeted beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. Hundreds of people from Kathua's block Barnoti in India's Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir attended this Yatra at Panchayat Taharara. Several beneficiaries who were present expressed their views and shared their success stories in the segment Meri Kahani Mi Zubani. And now we take a look at other stories making news around the world. Heavy rain and strong winds battered Sydney on Wednesday, bringing more wild weather to the New South Wales state capital after a stormy Christmas. Strong winds blew off roofs and brought down trees in some of the worst affected areas. A private company has established a bakery in Afghanistan's Kandahar, which is run by women only. Officials from the company say they have created jobs for 20 women who are the only breadwinner of their family and are hoping to increase this number. Women have been particularly affected in the past 2 years amid the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the country. And South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun, who starred in Oscar-winning film Parasite, was found dead on Wednesday. The police said to have found evidence of lit charcoal briquettes inside the 48-year-old actor's car, suggesting that his death may have been a suicide. And in some business cheer, key Asian stocks went up on Wednesday, buoyed by year-end expectations. In India, shares advanced, tracking gains in Asia and driven by optimism that the US Federal Reserve could begin cutting interest rates early next year. The Sensex at the BSE jumped over 700 points to end above 70,000 mark for the first time, while the Nifty 50 hit its fresh record high of over 21,650 points. And talking of India's stock market has been placed among the top 10 best performing stock markets in the world this year. Earlier in 2023, Indian stock markets started on a tough note. The benchmark indices then rebounded impressively, pushing India into the list of the top 10 best performing global markets. The Nifty 50 index has demonstrated a strength with an 18% year-to-date gain. Bouncing back from March, it surged over 28%, reaching a record high of over 21,650 points by the end of 2023. The Nifty 50 performed better than many developed and emerging market counterparts. Meanwhile, China's Shanghai Composite Index struggled for the second year, posting negative returns over 5% in 2023 after a loss of 15% in 2022. Moving on now, Indian government-owned telecommunications company Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited signed a memorandum of understanding with the Anna University and the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, on Wednesday. The MOU encompasses various promising initiatives which include courses which are meticulously crafted to enhance the skill sets of both students and young professionals in the field of telecom industry. Speaking on the occasion, Praveen Kumar Purvar, chairman of Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited, spoke about the facets and importance of the MOU in the current telecom industry scenario.
The new MOU which we have signed with the Anna University is to bridge the gap between academic function and the industry. As on date, the telecommunication services has become ever pervasive to each and every place, and there is a lot of requirement of a trained professional in telecom services. We find the students which are coming out from the schools or colleges are to be further trained, so the gap between the knowledge they have acquired in the colleges and required by the industry need to be bridged. This course will bring the practical knowledge to them so that they should be battle ready to be deployed in the network from the day one.
And today is Bollywood actor Salman Khan's 58th birthday. Salman's birthday celebrations were all things fun. The superstar rang in the special day with his family and close friends in Mumbai. Salman Khan, one of the most loved actors and truly Bollywood's Bhaijan, has starred in prominent films like Hum Aapke Hai Kaun, Maine Pyar Kiya, Andaz Apna Apna, Dabangg, Tere Naam, Bodyguard, and so on. So that's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks ahead on DD India. I am Tanvi Taneja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.